Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to shape a wool or felt hat at home. So the first thing I do is get a pot of water going, filling it maybe a third or half just so it doesn't spill over. And then I start looking at my hat. So in another video, we'll show you how to clean your hat, but that's the first place I start, whether it's my hat that I'm shaping or shaping it for someone else. Then I look at the hat and decide what I want to do with it. First I start with the crown because some of the symmetry down here in the brim will be based off of what we do with the crown. And so if it's a hat that you bought open crown, sky's the limit. You can do a lot of stuff. If it's already got a crown pressed in there, then there's some augmentations you can make and some that you can't, just based on what's in there. The other thing to consider, I think so mostly, is the fit. If you know you're going to be cramming the hat down, does that mean you need to do some stuff to bring the crown up, or is it fine where it's at? So things mostly centered around function, not necessarily shape. So I'm going to put a cattleman crown in this first, just so you can see that and kind of how to shape a crown, and then we'll talk about some things with the brim. So the first thing that I like to think about when I'm shaping on a felt is just how much heat I need, and that will change depending on maybe the quality of the hat you have. The one thing that is true is you don't want to get these too hot, but in order to do what you need to do, you need to warm it up. So basically when you heat felt, it releases the tension of the interlocking fibers of the felt. So when you heat it up, it kind of relaxes for a minute, and then when it cools, it'll grab and tighten right back up again. And so in that time frame, you're going to try to manipulate this, and when you do that, hopefully when it cools, it'll stay in that similar spot. And so I'll just start with this crown and just kind of show you how I go about it. So I stay pretty far away. I mean, that's 8 inches to a foot at first, and I just try to keep it moving. When you're first starting out, you probably don't want to do what I'm doing here where I can't see where my heat source is. You might want to stay back here. But I'm going to get the entire crown kind of the same temperature. Even though I might just be shaping part of it, I'm going to get the whole thing kind of warmed up and just see what that does. So I like to do a lot of belly shaping or chest shaping or on the board shaping. Those are two spots I do it. So for the crown, I like to go to the board at first just so I can see symmetry. So I'm going to go right here to this board. I'm going to set it down, and I kind of have a time clock in my head because if I let this sit here, it'll cool. But I'm going to try to put a very symmetrical crease in this crown just for the top, okay? So I can already feel that this has cooled down a little bit, so I'm going to put a little bit more heat on it. Basically, if it's warm to the touch, it's warm enough. If it's hot to the touch, it's too hot, okay? So I'll put a little heat exactly where I'm going, back to the board. And I'm going to put my hands right at the center, and I'm going to come up and put my thumbs right here and just pull them straight out. Now I'm not going to push down super hard. I'm not going to pull out super fast. I'm just going to put just a suggestion in that felt, and then I'm going to pick it up and look at it as it cools. And I'm just looking to see, do both of these seem to be the same height? Just some symmetry indicators, and they're pretty close, okay? So once I have that, I can either get pretty critical about that, make a few changes, or what I like to do is just start to get the rest of it going and come back. So I'm going to put 2 side vents in this to make it a cattleman crown. So this time I'm just going to heat the one side, okay? I'm about 6 to 8 inches away. Get it nice and warm, okay? I'm going to go back to my board, and I'm going to put my 2 thumbs, what I think is center, and I'm just going to pull them out slowly, okay? Now, here is kind of a secret. If I want this divot to not be super deep, I will want to start that with my hands higher, closer to this ridge. If I want that ridge to be deeper, I will start lower, okay? That will make that lower. Now, if you want this hat to fit nice and high on their head, you don't want a deep side vent, okay? For style, you might. So I'm going to go the other side, do the same thing. So heat this side up. Getting it perfect at this moment is not a good idea, mostly because you have a lot of things to do before you get to that minute detail. And hats are never finished, so you can certainly come back to it. So once that's warm, I'm going to put my thumbs in the same spot, looking over here to make sure I'm doing about the same pull. Okay, and I'm just going to hold that, let it kind of cool. I'm not pushing hard down, I'm not pulling hard out. Okay, and then this is where I sit up on top of it and start to assess some things. Now, black hats are sometimes easy and hard to visually see, but it looks like this vent is further up than this one, and so then I just have to decide, do I want it to look more like this side or this side? I kind of want it to be more over here, so I'll need to heat this side a little bit more, okay? Once again, don't get too critical at first. Get kind of a suggestion of the shape you want, and then come back and refine that. You'll just drive yourself crazy trying to do everything at once. So this time, to try to match them, I'm going to stay up here
and I'm gonna try to put these two vents basically the same. Okay, so this is a side vent, this is a side vent, and here's my center. Okay, so I can run my two thumbs together to see some symmetry if you need to do that. Flip this around, and I'm gonna do the same thing here. So I'm gonna need a little heat. This is a little hard, and I'll show you kind of what it looks like here in a minute, and then we'll go on to the brim and come back and I'll show you a few things on how to finish these out. So I'm gonna run my two thumbs like this. Okay, so those two are roughly in the same spot. Really, especially with felts, just let the felt do its job. Don't try to force anything. If you're having to push too hard, you're not warm enough. Okay, so as that's cooling, we'll just look at this side vent. Okay, it's about that big, and you don't necessarily need to measure this. What I like to do is look on top to see that symmetry and just start looking at it. Does it look accurate? Does it not? Okay, we're going to go to the brim, and then I'm going to come back and show you a few alterations you can make to that crown to ensure that it's nice and symmetrical and looking sharp. Okay, so on a brim, I like to start with the front corners. So this is 100% a style suggestion based on region or discipline of horsemanship or whatever you do. And so typically, I don't judge. I mean, I'll go as wide as someone wants to go or as narrow as someone wants to go. Typically, you kind of want to stay in the range of the person's face. So if they don't know and you want to make suggestions, usually the front needs to be no narrower than their cheekbones. Okay, it can certainly be wider. That does some different things too, but that's just kind of a basic rule. It'll actually kind of line up with the size of the crown as well. So there's kind of some indicators for you. But I start with those corners and I set those corners first. Okay, so I'm going to heat that area pretty extensively. Nothing, super hot, but maybe a little hotter than I did the crown. Just because this is, when people say to crease a hat, this is kind of the spot where I would deem it creasing. It's pretty hard in comparison to just kind of molding it and bending it around. Okay, so I feel like I've got pretty good heat. I'm going to come to my board, and this is where I use my hands. You can certainly use a ruler too. I do that depending on what I'm doing. But I'm going to put my thumbs, what I think is evenly spaced around this crown, so about right there. Okay, and then I'm going to shoot my fingers out, and to me that's pretty much exactly center. Okay, now that could change but you can practice this if you need to. Run your fingers straight out. Okay, now for this hat I'm going to go a little bit wider than that. This would be maybe I don't know, in any discipline, just a little bit wider than that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my other fingers and just pull up. Not doing anything crazy, I'm just going to pull up and kind of hold that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the heat here now just to get a little bit more of a crease for that. So I'm going to just target that to those two areas. Okay, this is kind of the one time where you work a big section of the hat. Usually you don't want to do that. You kind of want to be decently localized with your heat. But here's a time in which you kind of do get to using the heat on a lot. So find those corners, and I'm just going to take my fingers and pull up. Okay, I'm trying not to break anything, go crazy, pull up about the same, and just hold that. And usually I kind of hold that till I can feel the heat kind of dissipate in the hat or the warmth. Okay. So once I feel like that's happening, it doesn't take too long, really. Then I go ahead and check it. And I look at it, and I'm just going to show you. You can kind of see. This is where I start to look for symmetry. You can see some waffling in the sides and some stuff, and that's no big deal. If the person I'm shaping this for is here, then I'll put this on their head at this time, and I'll start to make some decisions and kind of look at my crown, look at some different areas to see, is this centered? Is this where I want it to be on the hat? So we're going to assume it is. Now we're going to start to shape one side at a time, okay? When you decide how far out this goes, it kind of limits you, kind of basically, in my opinion, you can do anything you want, but to have a good classy look, you definitely, the wider you go here, the wider you're probably going to have back here. If this is really tight in the back, it's going to make this side do some kind of unnatural stuff. The one thing that I do know is a good style lasts a long time because it's what the hat wants to do. So I'm going to show you kind of what I would do with this one, and that's just start here, knowing that the back is going to have to stay pretty wide. Okay, so I'm going to put heat where I'm going to bend, which is going to be halfway between here and here. Now I can decide if I want this more of a, not a taco variety, but kind of more straight up and down or a little flatter, and this is kind of where I decide what this hat's going to do over the long run. So you can see me putting a good bit of heat right here, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this on my stomach. I'm going to put my fingers in the center of the hat, and this is where I decide how tall the side's going to be.
So if I want it to be, more straight up and down, I would go there. But I do know that this was pretty wide. I don't think it's going to look good straight up and down, so I'm going to come out kind of in the middle. If I want this to have more of a flat hat or buckaroo look, I might sneak out a little bit further. And this is where I start. So then I'm going to take my thumbs and just bend this up, and I'm going to take both of those together, and I'm just going to run them till my fingers hit the corner that I made, and as long as I'm dead even, that side is going to match. Okay, so I'm going to do that and hold it. Now, one thing from profile you'll see me do is I'm going to pull back to myself just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go back to the heat, do the same thing again. And I'll do this 2 or 3 times till I feel like the hat is wanting to stay up where I put it. Okay, okay, there's that heat. Find that spot and just pull out. Okay, I'm just going to work that multiple times, not necessarily hold, but just kind of keep it moving. Okay, and before I even look at it to decide anything about it, I'm going to go to the other side and match it and then decide. Okay, it might look really high up if the other side is down, and so you might make some decisions on that based upon what it looks like in comparison to the other side. Just try to get them to be even, and then we'll start to work on the style. Okay, just like that. Go to my stomach. Here I go. To my corner. I kind of push my stomach out at it. Okay. Go to the heat one more time. Try to keep this pretty even. Okay. And then we'll go and look at it and start to make some decisions on what we need to do. Just getting it close is a good way to start, because if you get really meticulous, you'll stay in that meticulous state and never get a hat shape. So I'm going to look at it. I can see a bunch of things wrong. One side looks more than the other, different things like that. So I'm going to start by just trying to get it symmetrical first, okay? And I'll just kind of keep going. What I can see is, because this hat's been shaped before, there's another kind of corner crease that might be trying to pull these sides around. And so knowing that, I might do this. So I'm going to pull right here, and then I'm going to do this, which looks like a gun, basically. But I'm going to put my ring finger, or not my ring finger, my middle finger right in the corner, my thumb where the dip would be, but just my thumb where it's natural, and then I'm going to take my pointer finger and just hold this shape right here. My other hand is just in the center of the hat. I'm not doing anything crazy, but I pulled, my middle finger's already there, and I'm just going to do this, okay? And that's going to help this first third of that kind of stay where it's supposed to, instead of maybe bubbling out. So that's that little gun shape. Your middle finger's already sitting there. Take your thumb, set it right there, pointer finger right there, just hold that, okay? Now, you can just see what that automatically already did. It stood this side up without doing anything aggressive to it. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. These little tips and tricks that I've learned over time really have just come about by finding what's the fastest, easiest way to do this. So I'm going to do the same thing. My middle finger's already there, pointer finger's going to go there, and I'm just going to do that. Okay, try to hold that shape right there. Okay, and I can see that this side is still wanting bubbled out, but you can kind of take a peek. Kind of straight, a little more bubble. So I can try that same philosophy, or I can go to the board to fix it. So I'm going to show you the board real quick, and then one other way to fix that bubble. Even if a hat does not have a creased corner, they might do this, especially if it's a lower quality hat. So just know that you might have to find some tips and tricks. So I'm going to go to the board, I'm going to lay it down, and just try to do this. Now the reason why I don't like this is if I push down too much, it'll curl that side a lot and take it out of symmetry, okay? So I don't like to do that way. You can see that immediately, how that side looks way taller, way more curled up. So I'm gonna fix that real quick, and I'm gonna show you my other preferred way. So the first way was what we did. The second one is what I like to do as well. So I'm gonna start with that, push this guy over, and if it's not working, I'll look at it and I'll look and see. I'm gonna take my right thumb and put it in the corner, and I'm going to use just my thumb to try to fix that, okay? It's actually working pretty good, okay? By holding this corner, it keeps this side from flopping over really, really far, okay? So I'll take a peek down that, and you can see it's getting close. I'm pretty particular, so that's not close enough for me. So I might go back to my first way of doing that. What I like to do is, like I say, get these close, and we can come back and work on some of the symmetry later, because some of this might be coming from, different parts in the hat that are bubbling out, different things like that. So once I feel like I have the front kind of close, then I'm going to check the back symmetry. And sometimes just doing that will fix some of these front problems. So you'll see here, I'm just going and putting my thumb in the corner, and pushing that side over. Now, if you have a customer or someone that you're shaping this for, or you're shaping it for yourself that doesn't want a hard 90, well, just don't push over so much. You can still put your thumb in that corner, just don't really get after it. You might just kind of lightly do that, okay? So now I'm gonna go to the back and I'm gonna check it out, okay? So it looked decently symmetrical, but I don't want that kind of blocky behavior. I kind of want this to be nice and free-flowing, so I'm just gonna heat that up the sides a little bit, keep this nice. So it's kind of blocky because I made the front blocky and it's symmetrical, you know, a little bit to the front, so it's going to do that in the back. Okay, so what I do is I like to go to the board first and not put too much pressure here, but just keep this nice and flat, okay? So I'm going to bring this flatness out, and it's going to kind of ruin some of the side I did before, but I'm just going to kind of work this nice and flat. If you feel like you can just hold your hands there, you can, but I like to kind of work this until this is too flat, in my opinion. So that's too flat, okay? So now what I'm going to do, there's two ways to do this. I can come back to my belly and do it really slow, which to me works really well, especially if I'm trying to not go for too much of a bend. So I'll just demonstrate that. Okay, so I'm just going to put my hand in the center, and all I'm going to do is just try to maintain that nice slow curvature all the way around. So you can see that, nice and slow. Okay, that's one way of doing it. The other way, which I really like to do, just because you do them at the same time, especially for symmetry's sake, if you can work two sides of the hat at the same time, you're going to have a lot of good luck. So I'll show you that right here. Okay, I'm going to flatten this back out just for a second so you can see it. Okay, but this is what I like to do. I like to set it on its crown, and I'm just going to take my hands around the outside and just very so lightly do this. If I go to crunch this, it's really going to bring it up too far. I'm just going to nice and lightly work this up, okay? And I just kind of keep going until I feel this hat get cool, okay? And so you can see in no time at all, that's really symmetrical. Very symmetrical, okay? So now I go back to the front. So this is where you get to be critical. So the overall shape's close. Then come back to the crown, then come back to the front, and this is where you get to be picky. You get to decide how much, you know, imperfection is too much for you, how much is not. I don't like to deal with too much. So I'll fix this side, and then I'll just kind of show you from this basic shape, which, you know, I'd call this, you know, any cowboy would wear this. This is, you know, kind of the cattleman look. Nice kind of square front, not too high. This would be one for someone who's just first starting to wear cowboy hats that would look good. So that's the basics on how to shape a wool or felt hat. So if you like this video and want to see more videos just like this, please like and subscribe to the Startup Cowboy channel.